How to make money on rental property. Hey, it's Chris here from Property Abundance, and in this video we're going to dive into how you can maximize your income from properties that you're renting out on the open market. Now, first things first, why do people get into rental property and why should you be considering getting into rental property? Well, the first thing is, it is the best investment class out there. Okay, now let me justify that because that's quite a big claim, right? Now, can you tell me a single other investment class that firstly creates cash flow every single month at rates that can be life-changing from a single property? Secondly, is completely leverageable, i.e. you can use other people's money to buy? Or thirdly, goes up consistently over the long run? Okay, there's not many other asset classes out there that do that, is there? So let's dive into each of them firstly. Cash flow. When we rent out a property, we are generating monthly profits. Okay, we take what we receive in rental income, we take off costs like our mortgages, any agency fees, or any kind of maintenance costs for the property. And what's left at the end of that is profit that we get to keep. Now, just a few property deals, even just one or two of the right kind of property deals can create financial freedom, but you've got to know how to find them, so make sure you stay tuned. Now, this can also be passive. Now, I have an issue with the property training industry as a whole when they talk about passive income from property, because unless you do it right, it is far from passive. Now, there are ways that you can do your property business, ways that you can run your property business, software you can put in place, outsourcing you can put in place, teams you can put in place that do make it passive. But when you're starting your property business from the scratch, it ain't passive, okay? You've got to do work. You have to go out there and find your tenants, find your the people that are going to pay you the money. So I'm going to say passive can be passive if you do it right. The second one is leverageable. Okay, so it's leverageable. Now by this, I mean you can buy something worth far more than the cash value that you have. Okay, so let's say you've saved up £25,000. That means you have purchasing power of 100k. Because you can borrow 75% of the value of a property from a mortgage provider. So it's leverageable. It means your money can go far further. So you can buy £100,000 worth of property for just 25k. So you can multiply your cash value by 4. And thirdly, we've got asset growth. Now again, the property market goes up, it goes down. Right now at this very moment, it is on the way down. But the long-term trend is up and consistently up over time. Now that's great news for you because it's not only is it up, but it's also up more than inflation over the long run. So not only does your money grow in line with inflation, it exceeds inflation. So you're generating wealth just through owning property, through property ownership. Now the reasons for that is, well, in fact, we could do a whole video on the reasons for this, but high level, the reasons for it are there's more people moving to the country than there are houses being built, and land in this country is finite. Because we're an island, we don't have massive expanses of land like you get in the US. Because of that, the fact that it's a finite amount of land and house builders never build enough houses, and again, actually, we can't really blame the house builders, we need to blame the governments, okay? The governments don't fund enough house building or don't encourage enough house building through deregulation. And that means that we create a shortfall on houses built every single year versus people either being born or moving into the country. So the population grows faster than the housing stock, and that creates a shortage. And when you have a shortage, prices go up. So we have these 3 points that make property an amazing investment class when you do it right. Now, there is an issue here, and that's what I like to call the buy-to-let myth. Now, the buy-to-let myth is something left over from the 90s and the noughties, when money was cheap, you could get 100% remortgages, and then the 2008 crash came along and changed it all. Okay, so back then, you could borrow up to 100% of the value of the property. It's crazy, isn't it? You can literally go, I'm going to have that house, and that bank's going to pay for it. Any increase in value of that property is mine. Now, unfortunately, I was too young back then to be able to benefit from this, but back then a lot of people were making a lot of money just getting into buy-to-let mortgages and buy-to-let property, using these massively leveraged buy-to-let mortgages. So this idea that you can get into property, you don't need to use any of your own money, and you can become a millionaire overnight persists to this day. But the market has changed. It's not as easy as that anymore. Okay, now there are ways we can do it, but the buy-to-let myth is not the way. Now, by the way, if you're finding this video helpful, please do me a massive favor, hit that like button, comment below on what your biggest takeaway from this video has been so far, and please subscribe to the channel so you can stay up to date with regular property tips and content straight out of my own 7-figure property business. Now, back to the buy-to-let myth. Okay, the buy-to-let myth no longer exists because after 2008, we had all these extra financial regulations put in place that prevented 100% mortgages, introduced more stringent stress testing on properties to make sure that they were going to earn enough to cover the cost of the mortgage. And it basically meant that this old way of doing things no longer worked. Now, if that wasn't bad enough, the government then brought in a tax change that meant that all the money that you spend on your buy-to-let mortgage, the cost of that finance, basically the money you pay them to have the finance, is no longer tax deductible for private investors, meaning your single biggest expense can't be taken off your calculations before you calculate your taxable profit. Don't look for the logic here, there's no logic to it, it's just HMRC. Okay, they are literally taxing people on money they haven't earned. It's mental. However, there is a way around this. That's the good news, right? So, the way around it is to use different acquisition strategies. Now, the one I favor most when we're trying to buy and rent out properties is called BRRR. Stands for buy, refurbish, revalue, refinance. Okay, now let's dive into each of those. We need to buy the property for as little as possible. Okay, so let's say we get a property below the market value and let's say we buy it for 400 grand. Okay, we buy the property for 400 grand. Let's say we then refurbish it and add 150k of development costs to that. So we're going to spend £150,000 developing the property, maybe adding extensions, attic conversions, new kitchens, new bathrooms, everything we can to increase the floor space, the usable floor space, and raise the value of this property. So we are in for 400k plus 150, so we're in for 550, and then we've got taxes and stuff on top of that, but let's just keep this simple at this point. So we're in for 550, and let's say that the house then gets revalued at 750. Okay, so we get a revaluation after we've done this big extension, we've created a nice new house, we've maybe turned it into an HMO, we're going to talk about that a little bit later. We've maybe started running it as a service department, we'll talk about that a bit later as well. But we've added a load of value to this house, and let's say it gets revalued at 750. Now we can now borrow 75% of this figure from a mortgage provider, meaning that we can borrow 562k. 562 and 50 I think as well. Okay. But we've only spent 550. So when we refinance it, we use this to pay back wherever we got this money and this money from, whether it was an investor or whether it was our own money or whether we use development finance. By the way, if you find a video on specifically finance and finance for property products, if you find that useful, let me know in the comments. We can get some recorded on that as well. So we've got 56250 back out, but we only got 550. So that leaves us a profit of £12,500. Plus, we've just got that house for free. Because the mortgage that we've taken out, the refinance, has paid back our initial investment and our development costs, and has left us with an additional £12,500 just from the refinance. Plus, we now own this house and we haven't had to put any of our own money in because any money we've put in has come back to us. Okay, we've got it back out of the deal. Now, this is a phenomenally powerful acquisition strategy because if you save up some money and you want to maximize the use of that, this is the best way to recycle that cash every time you do one of these deals. Now, if you get, let's say, by the way, and I'm going to kind of throw some numbers around here just without having planned it, so you might have to bear with me on the calculations. Let's say it didn't hit 750, let's say it only hit 700, and that meant that we couldn't get the full amount back out in the refinance, and then these numbers probably won't be right, but let's say we could only get, I don't know, 525 back out in the refinance. But we spent 550. Well, that's still a good deal. Because even if you can't get all the money back out, it does mean you've just bought a house, 525, sorry, that's missing a 5. It means you just bought a house for 25 grand, which is still a phenomenally great deal, right? Now, let's say you needed to get the money back out because you've used somebody else's money. You've worked with an investor, you've got to give them their money back. Well, that's when we, instead of looking at refinancing the property, we look to sell it for its full value, pay our investor back, and we walk away with 150k of profit, okay, after our capital gains and all the taxes and stuff. But gross profit 150, and then taxes to come off that. So do you see how this is a massively powerful strategy for helping you to recycle money every time you get it? Now, if you did have to sell and you give all the money back to an investor, guess what? They've got a big problem again because they've got money sitting in their account that's falling in value because inflation is eroding it away. So if that's how we get the houses, and that's how we can maximize our investment funds to get houses, what do we do with them once we've got them? Well, once we've done our BRR strategy, there are two investment models that I would recommend that you look at. The first is called HMOs, and the second is called serviced accommodation. Now, an HMO is where we rent out a property by the room. Now, why would you do that? It's because you make more money. Now, not only do you make more money running it as an HMO, but you also provide more affordable accommodation in your area. And I think we can all agree at a point of time where you can't turn on the news without seeing about the cost of living crisis, people will appreciate a bit more affordable accommodation. Now, because of things like this, because of the cost of living crisis, because it's the bottom end of the market, you get a surplus of tenants when you have financial turbulence. So in a point like right now, where everything's a bit kind of turbulent, there's a lot of risk, people are talking about prices going up, people being made homeless, etc., etc. There is more demand than ever for the bottom end of the market. So you get very good demand during recessions or during turbulent times. So let's have a look. So let's say we created an HMO. We took that property that we just spoke about, we turned it into a 6-bedroom HMO. Well, now we've got 6 rooms that we can rent out. And let's say we rent out our rooms for £600 a month, including our bills. So 6 6s, 36, 3,600 is our rent roll. Versus if we were to just rent this out on a normal AST, let's say we'd get 2,000. It's probably about realistic. So instantly we're up by £1,600, but these are bills included fees. So we need to take off the bills from this as well. Now, on average, bills for an HMO work out around about £100 per room per month for 5 and 6 bedroom properties. Smaller ones, like 4 bedrooms, there's a little bit more per month per room. But if we take off a good £600 in bills, then that leaves us with 3,000 versus 2,000 if we were to rent it out traditionally. Now, obviously our mortgages still have to come off these, but you can see straight away we're starting from a much higher figure. So we're going to be left with far more profit. Now, the serviced accommodation side of things is slightly different. Again, let's say we take that property, but we rent it out as a serviced accommodation. Well, here we're going to charge a nightly rate to stay in the property. We're not going to have long-term tenants. Well, we might have long-term tenants, but they're not going to pay a monthly rate. They're going to pay a nightly rate. And instead of just providing a shell of a property like you might do to a traditional tenant over here in the buy-to-let model, here we're going to provide the property fully fitted, all the furniture, all the bedding, all the linen, everything in the kitchen, everything in the bathrooms, even toiletries, like you're walking into a hotel room. Okay, so people can just turn up with their suitcase full of clothes and start living there straight away. So let's say we rent it out for 21 nights a month. And we get a nightly rate of £250 a night because it was quite a large property, wasn't it? So 21 times 250 is 5,250 per month of top line rent roll. Now you might be looking at that and go, wow, hang on a minute, 2,000 versus 5,000, like this is a no-brainer, why doesn't everyone do it? Well look, there is stuff to come off this, okay? So we need to take off commissions, what do you call it, comms? So commissions to sites like Airbnb, sites like Booking.com, they'll charge you about 15%. We need to take off cleaning fees and linen. Cleaning with a G on the end. Cleaning and linen. Things like the Wi-Fi. Okay, people are going to be expecting there to be Wi-Fi in these properties. Things like the consumables. Now by that I mean like the toilet paper, the toiletries, like the little shower gels and stuff. What have we missed here? Comms, linen, Wi-Fi, consumables. Council tax, and then bills. Let's just call that bills. So that's things like gas, electric, water, TV license, that kind of stuff. But even once you take some of these off, we're still going to be around about the £3,000 mark here. So this is still going to be a circa £3,000 of income after taking off all your costs. So again, a massive way of increasing your rental income versus a traditional let. Now, with these two models, there is more work involved than a traditional buy-to-let, but the income is so much different that it's very, very outsourceable, because when you're basically adding an extra 50% to your earnings, you can start to outsource things much, much sooner. So you can get property managers involved. You know, like a couple of these making you, let's say mortgage comes off this as well and leaves you £2,000 of profit. But £2,000 a month, that's getting close to being a decent salary for somebody. So, just a couple of SA units that you owned following this model, we'd be making £4,000 a month. That's more than enough to hire somebody full-time just to run this operation for you. So hopefully you found this really, really insightful. Hopefully you can now see why the old buy-to-let model is just nowhere near as attractive these days because of the changes, and why you need to be focusing on buy, refurb, refinance as your primary strategy. If you want to learn more about this, we are offering some 30-minute free consultation calls where we'll get to grips with where you are right now, what you're looking to achieve, and what kind of resources you have to help you out along the way. And we'll advise you on what your next steps should be. So if you want to grab one of those free 30-minute consultation calls, the link is in the description down below this video. Other than that, guys, I'll see you in the next video. Take care. Bye-bye.